Hi everyone, I'm live. My hair's a mess because I've been practicing tying a scarf over my face. And my mind is a mess because I have a cold, but otherwise, right. So welcome to the stream. One person, it doesn't matter. We're going to start off with a recap like we always do, but once Evelyn gets here, I'm going to show her a way that I learned today of tying a scarf. It's really cool. I like practiced doing it to go to the warehouse, and then I realized that the crowds would be so massive there. I didn't really want to face it, like not even for Easter chocolate. So, oh, am I online? Sometimes it disconnects. Doesn't tell me. I might not be online right now. That's interesting. But how to find out for sure? Oh, no, one person seems to be here. Am I online? Is my computer working? I think I'm online. Doesn't matter. We do the same thing no matter who was here, really. Oh, God, horrible. But we're going to soldier on because the hell else are we going to do? Hey, Evelyn, give me a yell when you're watching and I'll show you how to the scarf thing I was doing. And then I'll check my friend John. I'm really enjoying the fake fringe. It's keeping my forehead warm. Oh, I've got Stardew Valley open. That's probably not good. Let's just exit out of that. So, yeah, hello, Dracula. Chapter 23, I want to say. 23. Yesterday's chapter was a long one by Jonathan Harker about lots of little legal details about breaking into one of Dracula's houses. And it was very dull. It was dull for me to read, it was dull for you to hear, but that's Jono. So, stream brought to you by some orange juice I can drink right out of the bottle because I live by myself. Every little bit helps. Joe, what's up? Okay, I'm recapping the last chapter, which is it was the guy trying to track down Dracula's boxes of earth where he sleeps for the night. For the day, sorry. And where he can regenerate. And putting the sacramental wafer into them. So that's pretty much all they did in the last chapter. To recap it all the way up until now, probably not easy. So we've got Jonathan Harker, who's the plotting, boring lawyer. His wife, Mina Harker, who is the only person who knows what's going on and intelligent enough to do anything about it. And she is being Draculaed right now. She's Dracula's been drinking her blood. She drank some of his blood. They have a psychic link at the moment. Dr. Abraham Van Helsing, who is ambiguously foreign. I don't think he even is foreign. I think he's faking it so he can get away with being a dickhead. And Dr. Seward, the only doctor with a worse bedside manner than Van Helsing. This guy fucking sucks, man. He runs the lunatic asylum. Lord Godalming, who was Mina's best friend's fiance before Dracula ate the best friend. And Quincy Morris, a cowboy, an American cowboy from Texas who was there for seemingly no reason and might be in league with Dracula. There's a theory that he is, but it's just a theory. It's not like a plot thing. So I think that pretty much brings us up to the present. Yes, it does. That brings us up to date in under 10 minutes. Pretty cool. Yeah. Yep. Quincy Morris, he's a cowboy. At one point, they're all having a meeting and they're discussing, like, well, they're not discussing, they're listening to a really long, really boring lecture from Van Helsing about Dracula's strengths and weaknesses and stuff. And he, like, pretends he saw a bat at the window and just goes outside to shoot some stuff. He says he did see a bat at the window. I think he was just bored. But yeah, there's a gunslinging cowboy in Dracula. Pretty good. The evidence against him is very circumstantial. Sometimes he's like outdoors at night. Yeah. What did somebody say? He was outside being American? Just, shooting stuff outside. Sorry. Yeah, they all fell into a lot of trouble because the guys decided that Mina was just so precious that she had to be left out of everyone's discussions. And that didn't work very well because they didn't realize that she was being Draculaed. And neither did she, but, she was the victim, so, like, Dracula has powers to make you not really realize what's going on. They should have figured it out a little bit earlier than they did, but, they busted in on Dracula with Mina, even though there was a cravat on the door. There wasn't. If there had been a cravat on the door, they would never have burst in. So now they have to kill Dracula before Mina turns into a vampire. Hello, Fitzy. What do you want? No, you can't see him. What do you want? He wants to go outside. Oh, where'd you go? How'd you go? Oh, that was probably a really good view. My horrible bizarre bod. Yeah. So, the other thing you need to know about Dracula is that it's all told in diaries that people keep and letters to each other. So they've all been arranged in chronological order so you can see the narrative, but it's not like a normal book. They're all diaries and letters and newspaper articles and things. Which is pretty cool because you get to jump around with point of view. Okay, we're about at the 10-minute mark. Here comes chapter 23, Dr. Seward's diary. 3rd of October. The time seemed terrible long whilst we were waiting for the coming of Godalming and Quincy Morris. The professor tried to keep our minds active by using them all the time. I could see his beneficent purpose by the side glances which he threw from time to time at Harker. The poor fellow was overwhelmed in a misery that is appalling to see. Last night he was a frank, happy-looking man, with strong, youthful face, full of energy, and with dark brown hair. Today he is a drawn, haggard old man. His white hair matches well with the hollow, burning eyes and grief-written lines of his face. His energy is still intact. In fact, he is like a living flame. This may yet be his salvation, for if all goes well, it will tide him over the despairing period. He will then, in a kind of way, wake again to the realities of life. Poor fellow, I thought my own trouble was bad enough, but his. The professor knows this well enough, and is doing his best to keep his mind active. What he has been saying was, under the circumstances, of absorbing interest. So well as I can remember, here it is. And Joe Van Helsing has an incredibly annoying speech pattern, so heads up. I have studied over and over again since they came into my hands all the papers relating to this monster, and the more I have studied, the greater seems the necessity to utterly stamp him out. Although there are signs of his advance, not only of his power, but of his knowledge of it. As I learned from the researches of my friend Arminius of Budapest, he was in life a most wonderful man, soldier, statesman, and alchemist, which latter was the highest development of the science knowledge of his time. He had a mighty brain, a learning beyond compare, and a heart that knew no fear and no remorse. He dared even to attend the scholarmans, and there was no branch of knowledge of his time that he did not essay. Well, in him the brain powers survived the physical death, though it would seem that memory was not all complete. In some faculties of mind he has been and is only a child, but he is growing, and some things that were childish at the first are now of man's stature. He is experimenting and doing it well, and if it had not been that we have crossed his path, he may be yet, if we fail, the father or furtherer of a new order of beings, whose road must lead through death, not life. Harker groaned and said, "And this is all arrayed against my darling. But how is he experimenting? The knowledge may help us to defeat him." He has all along since his coming been trying his power, slowly but surely. That big child brain of his is working. Well, for us it is as yet a child brain, for had he dared at the first to attempt certain things, he would long ago have been beyond our power. However, he means to succeed, and a man who has centuries before him can afford to wait and to go slow. Festina lente may well be his motto. Go slow to hurry. I fail to understand, said Harker wearily. Oh, do be more plain to me. Perhaps grief and trouble are dulling my brain. The professor I think the professor talks like this because he doesn't know as much as he thinks. And that's also why I think he's pretending to be foreign. The professor laid his hand tenderly on his shoulder as he spoke. Oh, my child, I will be plain. Do you not see how of late this monster has been creeping into knowledge experimentally? How he has been making use of the zoophagous patient to effect his entry into friend John's home? For your vampire, though in all afterwards he can come when and how he will, must at the first make entry only when asked thereto by an inmate. But these are not his most important experiments. Do we not see how at the first all these so great boxes were moved by others? He knew not then, but that must be so. But all the time that so great child brain of his was growing, and he began to consider whether he might not himself move the box. So he began to help, and then when he found that this be all right, he tried to move them all alone. And so he progressed, and he scattered these graves of him, and none but he knew where they are hidden. He may have intended to bury them deep in the ground, so that he only used them in the night, or at such time as he can change his form they do him equal well, and none may know these are his hiding place. But my child, do not despair. This knowledge come to him just too late. Already all of his layers but one be sterilized as for him, and before the sunset this shall be so. Then he have no place where he can move and hide. I delayed this morning so that we might be sure. Is there not more at stake for us than for him? Then why we not be even more careful than him? By my clock it was 1 hour, and already, if all be well, friend Arthur and Quincy are on their way to us. Today is our day, and we must go sure if slow, and lose no chance. See, there are 5 of us when those absent ones return. He's very annoying. Whilst he was speaking, we were startled by a knock at the hall door, the double postman's knock of the telegraph boy. We all moved out into the hall with one impulse, and Van Helsing, holding up his hand to us to keep silence, stepped to the door and opened it. The boy handed in a dispatch. The professor closed the door again, and after looking at the direction, opened it and read aloud. Look out for D. He has just now, 12:45, come from Carfax hurriedly and hastened toward the south. He seems to be going the round and may want to see you. Mina. She has a kind of a psychic connection with Dracula at this point. There was a pause, broken by Jonathan Harker's voice. Now, God be thanked, we shall soon meet. Van Helsing turned to him quickly and said, God will act in his own way and time. Do not fear, and do not rejoice as yet, for what we wish for at the moment may be our undoings. I care for nothing now, he answered hotly, except to wipe up this brute from the face of creation. I would sell my soul to do it. Oh, hush, hush, my child, said Van Helsing. God does not purchase souls in this wise, and the devil, though he may purchase, does not keep faith. But God is merciful and just, and knows your pain and your devotion to that dear Madam Mina. Think you how her pain would be doubled, did she but hear your wild words. Do not fear any of us. We are all devoted to this cause, and today shall see the end. The time is coming for action. Today this vampire is limited to the powers of man. Until sunset he may not change. It will take him time to arrive here. See, it is 20 minutes past 1. And there are yet some times before he can hither come, be he never so quick. What we must hope for is that my Lord Arthur and Quincy arrive first. Oh, also a thing that I forgot from the last chapter is that Mina has pretty much asked that she's kind of stated that if she becomes a vampire, she's going to kill herself unless one of her friends can do it for her. And they're all like, yes, we will kill you, Mina, we promise. And Jonathan in his private diary is like, well, my wife turns into a vampire. I guess I'm going to become a vampire too. Which I prefer, actually. Although, it does go against her stated wishes, so... Overall, Jono's doing pretty well. About half an hour after we had received Mrs. Harker's telegram, there came a quiet, resolute knock at the hall door. It was just an ordinary knock, such as is given hourly by thousands of gentlemen, but it made the professor's heart and mine beat loudly. We looked at each other and together moved out into the hall. We each held ready to use our various armaments, the spiritual in the left hand, the mortal in the right. Van Helsing pulled back the latch, and holding the door half open, stood back, having both hands ready for action. The gladness of our hearts must have shown on our faces when on the step, close to the door, we saw Lord Godalming and Quincy Morris. They came quickly in and closed the door behind them, the former saying as they moved along the hall, "It's all right. We found both places. 6 boxes in each, and we destroyed them all." "Destroyed?" asked the professor. "For him." We were silent for a minute, and then Quincy said, "There's nothing to do but wait here. If, however, he doesn't turn up by 5 o'clock, we must start off, for it won't do to leave Mrs. Harker alone after sunset." Yeah, could have done with not leaving Mrs. Harker alone a lot earlier than now, but, "He will be here before long now," said Van Helsing, who had been consulting his pocketbook. Nota bene, in Madame's telegram, he went south from Carfax. That means he went across the river, and he could only do so at its lack of tide, which should be something before 1 o'clock. That he went south has a meaning for us. He is as yet only suspicious, and he went from Carfax first to the place where he would suspect interference least. You must have been at Bermondsey only a short time before him. That he is not here already shows that he went to Mile End next. This took him some time, for he would then have to be carried over the river in some way. Believe me, my friends, we shall not have long to wait now. We should have ready some plan of attack, so that we may throw away no chance. Hush! There is no time now. Have all your arms. Be ready. He held up a warning hand as he spoke, for we could all hear a key softly inserted into the lock of the hall door. I could not but admire, even at such a moment, the way in which a dominant spirit asserted itself. In all our hunting parties and adventures in different parts of the world, Quincy Morris had always been the one to arrange the plan of action, and Arthur and I had been accustomed to obey him implicitly. Now the old habit seemed to be renewed instinctively. With a swift glance around the room, he at once laid out our plan of attack, and without speaking a word, with a gesture, placed us each in position. Van Helsing, Harker, and I were just behind the door, so that when it was opened, the professor could guard it, whilst we two stepped between the incomer and the door. Godalming behind, and Quincy in front, stood just out of sight, ready to move in front of the window. We waited in a suspense that made the seconds pass with nightmare slowness. The slow, careful steps came along the hall. The Count was evidently prepared for some surprise. At least he feared it. Suddenly, with a single bound, he leapt into the room, winning away past us before any of us could raise a hand to stay him. There was something so panther-like in the movement, something so unhuman, that it seemed to sober us all from the shock of his coming. The first to act was Harker, who with a quick movement threw himself before the door leading into the room in the front of the house. As the Count saw us, a horrible sort of snarl passed over his face, showing eye teeth long and pointed, but the evil smile as quickly passed into a cold stare of lion-like disdain. His expression again changed as, with a single impulse, we all advanced upon him. It was a pity that we had not some better organized plan of attack, for even at the moment I wondered what we were to do. I do not myself know whether our lethal weapons would avail us anything. Harker evidently meant to try the matter, for he had ready his great kukri knife and made a fierce and sudden cut at him. The blow was a powerful one, only the diabolical quickness of the Count's leap back saved him. A second less, and the trenchant blade had shorn through his heart. As it was, the point just cut the cloth of his coat, making a wide gap whence a bundle of banknotes and a stream of gold fell out. It was weird moments of slapstick. The expression of the Count's face was so hellish that for a moment I feared for Harker, though I saw him throw the terrible knife aloft again for another stroke. Instinctively I moved forward with a protective impulse, holding the crucifix and wafer in my left hand. I felt a mighty power fly along my arm, and it was without surprise that I saw the monster cower back before a similar movement made spontaneously by each of us. It would be impossible to describe the expression of hate and baffled malignity, of anger and hellish rage, which came over the Count's face. His waxen hue became greenish-yellow by the contrast of his burning eyes, and the red scar on the forehead showed on the pallid skin like a palpitating wound. The next instant, with a sinuous dive, he swept under Harker's arm, ere his blow could fall, and grasping a handful of the money from the floor, dashed across the room, threw himself at the window. Amid the crash and glitter of the falling glass, he tumbled into the flagged area below. Through the sound of the shivering glass, I could hear the ting of the gold as some of the sovereigns fell on the flagging. I'm sorry, but that's funny. I'm going to cut Dracula's heart, and a bunch of coins fall out, and then he runs and jumps out of the window, and you can hear some of the coins falling, and I assume rolling along the ground until they fall on their side and go dong 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 dong. thing that I didn't expect in Dracula, but I'm glad it's there. Sorry. Just a cold. We ran over and saw him spring unhurt from the ground. He, rushing up the steps, crossed the flagged yard and pushed open the stable door. Then he turned and spoke to us. You think to baffle me, you, with your pale faces all in a row like sheep in a butcher's. You shall be sorry yet, each one of you. You think you have left me without a place to rest, but I have more. My revenge has just begun. I spread it over centuries, and time is on my side. Your girls that you all love are mine already, and through them you and others shall yet be mine, my creatures, to do my bidding and to be my jackals when I want to feed. The continuous sneer he passed quickly through the door, and we heard his rusty bolt creak as he fastened it behind him. A door beyond opened and shut. The third of us to speak was the Professor. As realizing the difficulty of following him through the stable, we moved toward the hall. We have learned something. Much. Notwithstanding his brave words, he fears us. He fears time, he fears want. For if not, why he hurries so? His very tone betray him, all my ears deceive. Why take that money? You follow quick. You are hunters of wild beast and understand it so. For me, I make sure that nothing here may be of use to him, if so that he return. As he spoke, he put the money remaining into his pocket, took the title deeds in the bundle as Harker had left them, and swept the remaining things into the open fireplace, where he set fire to them with a match. You guys keep tracing Dracula. I'm going to make sure that when he comes back, he doesn't find any of this money. If he had this money, it would be bad. I'm just going to dispose of it in code for now. Anyway, hurry the fuck up. Go get Dracula. I don't know if the comedy is intentional or not. I can't really tell. No, it's not one of them. Godalming and Morris had rushed out into the yard, and Harker had lowered himself from the window to follow the Count. He had, however, bolted the stable door, and by the time they had forced it open, there was no sign of him. Van Helsing and I tried to make inquiry at the back of the house, but the mews was deserted, and no one had seen him depart. It was now late in the afternoon, and sunset was not far off. We had to recognise that our game was up. With heavy hearts, we agreed with the Professor when he said, "Let us go back to Madame Mina. Poor dear Madame Mina. All we can do just now is done, and we can there at least protect her. But we need not despair. There is but one more earth box, and we must try to find it. When that is done, all may yet be well." I could see that he spoke as bravely as he could to comfort Harker. The poor fellow was quite broken down. Now and again he gave a low groan which he could not suppress. He was thinking of his wife. With sad hearts we came back to my house, where we found Mrs. Harker waiting us, with an appearance of cheerfulness which did honour to her bravery and unselfishness. When she saw our faces, her own became as pale as death. For a second or two her eyes were closed, as if she were in secret prayer, and then she said cheerfully, "I can never thank you all enough. Oh, my poor darling." As she spoke, she took her husband's grey head in her hands and kissed it. "Lay your poor head here and rest it. All will yet be well, dear. God will protect us, if he so will it in his good intent." The poor fellow groaned. There was no place for words in his sublime misery. We had a sort of perfunctory supper together, and I think it cheered us all up somewhat. It was perhaps the mere animal heat of food to hungry people, for none of us had eaten breakfast. All the sense of companionship may have helped us, but anyhow we were all less miserable and saw the morrow was not altogether without hope. True to our promise, we told Mrs. Harker everything which had passed, and although she grew snowy white at times when danger had seemed to threaten her husband, and red at others when his devotion to her was manifested, she listened bravely and with calmness. When we came to the part where Harker had rushed at the Count so recklessly, she clung to her husband's arm and held it tight as though her clinging could protect him from any harm that might come. She said nothing, however, till the narration was all done, and matters had been brought right up to the present time. Then, without letting go of her husband's hand, she stood up amongst us and spoke. Oh, that I could give any idea of the scene, of that sweet, sweet, good, good woman, in all the radiant beauty of her youth and animation, with the red scar on her forehead of which she was conscious, and which we saw with grinding of our teeth, remembering whence and how it came. Her loving kindness against our grim hate, her tender faith against all our fears and doubting, and we, knowing that so far as symbols went, she, with all her goodness and purity and faith, was outcast from God. Mina has a scar on her forehead because they touched the sacred wafer. And yeah, it burned her pretty bad. She's not too happy. Jonathan, she said. And the word sounded like music on her lips. It was so full of love and tenderness. Jonathan, dear, and you all my true friends, I want you to bear something in mind during all this dreadful time. I know that you must fight, that you must destroy, even as you destroyed the false Lucy, so the true Lucy might live hereafter. But it is not a work of hate. That poor soul who has wrought all this misery is the saddest case of all. Just think what will be his joy when he too is destroyed in his worser part, that his better part may have spiritual immortality. You must be pitiful to him too, though it may not hold your hands from his destruction. Oh, it's actually love to be outcast from God. Feels good to me. I like it. Yeah, Mina's into the sympathy for the devil stage of being vampirized, I think. Or she just really is that sweet and kind and lovely. Bram Stoker's been pretty good so far at writing Mina as a human being, but this is Dr. Seward's diary, and he's kind of a proto-incel, I think. So kind of makes sense that he only really sees Mina as a thing, you know, like a really good vase. Just beautiful. And if somebody else broke your vase, you'd be really pissed off because you liked it. And every time you looked at it, you're like, that's a nice vase. Which I know for an incel is pretty good. As she spoke, I could see her husband's face darken and draw together, as though the passion in him was shrivelling his being to its core. Instinctively, the clasp on his wife's hand grew closer till his knuckles looked white. She did not flinch from the pain, which I knew she must have suffered, but looked at him, with eyes that were more appealing than ever. As she stopped speaking, he leapt to his feet, almost tearing his hand from hers as he spoke. May God give him into my hand just long enough to destroy that earthly life of him which we are aiming at. If beyond it I could send his soul for ever and ever to burning hell, I would do it. Hush, hush, in the name of the good God. Don't say such things, Jonathan, my husband, or you will crush me with fear and horror. Just think, my dear. I have been thinking all this long, long day of it, that perhaps someday I too may need such pity, and that some other like you, and with equal cause for anger, may deny it to me. Oh, my husband, indeed I would have spared you such a thought had there been another way, but I pray that God may not have treasured your wild words, except as the heartbroken wail of a very loving and sorely stricken man. Oh God, let these poor white hairs go in evidence of what he has suffered, who all his life has done no wrong, and on whom so many sorrows have come. We men were all in tears now. There was no resisting them, and we wept openly. She wept too, to see that her sweeter counsels had prevailed. Her husband flung himself on his knees beside her, and putting his arms round her, hid his face in the folds of her dress. Van Helsing beckoned to us, and we stole out of the room, leaving the two loving hearts alone with their God. Oh, hey. They've had a little bit of a run-in with Dracula. They were at his house. He came home. Jonathan tried to kill him with a kukri, but it just cut his shirt open. A bunch of gold coins fell out. Not kidding. And then Dracula ran up the window, and also you could hear the gold coins falling as well. Not kidding. That was in it. And then Van Helsing was like, "You boys chase Dracula. I'm going to stay here and make sure that we're not leaving anything behind that could be useful to Dracula." And he gathered up all the money and put it in his coat. All of that stuff actually happened. It was not what I'd expected. It was not what I remembered. So yeah. Anyway, Dracula gets away very easily, and Mina's just given a kind of heartwarming little speech about like I know, it was so dumb. So dumb. But yeah, they've all come home, and Mina's given them a little speech about how, when you kill Dracula, just think about how sad he is, and how when you kill him, you're sending, you're killing all the badness and all the vampireness in him that was in Lucy, and then Lucy went to heaven, so then Dracula will go to heaven. We should all really try and feel sorry for him. We should still kill him, but and Jonathan's like, fuck no, I'm going to put him in a big mincer, and then when he's done being minced, I'm going to shoot that shit right into the sun. And Mina's like, no, Dracula in heaven. He's one of the 5 people you meet in heaven from that self-help book. Yeah, one of them's Dracula. No one saw that coming. But Mina's like, one day that might be me. All right. I may have 500 years worth of murder behind me, and somebody else might want to kill me. So, and then everyone started crying. It was all very overwrought and kind of slapstick. But I think Mina is getting, what do you call Stockholm syndrome when it's for the victim of a vampire? I can't think of a specific place that's associated with vampires other than, Transylvania. Who knows? I don't know if she's actually been thinking about Dracula and has compassion for him, or if she's been thinking forward to how she will be and has compassion for him, thinking about that, or if it's the vampire influence working away in her. Don't know. So yeah, everyone was crying, and then all the guys just really politely left Jonathan, Harker, and Mina together. Because they're married, they want to ride together. But she is a little bit Stockholm syndrome, Barovia syndrome. It's Barovia syndrome. Yeah, Mina is still like quasi-vampire at this point. I probably wouldn't leave her alone with anybody. But what do I know? I'm not 2 doctors, a lord, and a cowboy. Not yet. Right, before they retired, the professor fixed up the room against any coming of the vampire, and assured Mrs. Harker that she might rest in peace. She tried to school herself to the belief, and manifestly for her husband's sake tried to seem content. It was a brave struggle, and was, I think and believe, not without its reward. Van Helsing had placed at hand a bell, which either of them was to sound in case of any emergency. When they had retired, Quincy, Godalming, and I arranged that we should sit up, dividing the night between us, and watch over the safety of the poor stricken lady. The first watch falls to Quincy, so the rest of us should be off to bed as soon as we can. Godalming has already turned in, for his is the second watch. Now that my work is done, I, too, shall go to bed. And that was Dr. Seward's diary. I'm guessing that we're about to see some evidence that Quincy Morris is in league with Dracula. Well, some ambiguous evidence. Jonathan Harker's journal. 3rd to 4th October, close to midnight. I thought yesterday never end. There was over me a yearning for sleep and some sort of blind belief that to wake would be to find things changed, and that any change must now be for the better. Before we parted, we discussed what our next step was to be, but we could arrive at no result. All we knew was that one earth box remained, and that the Count alone knew where it was. If he chooses to lie hidden, he may baffle us for years, and in the meantime, the thought's too horrible, I dare not think of it even now. This I know, that if ever there was a woman who was all perfection, that one is my poor wronged darling. I love her 1,000 times more for her sweet pity of last night, a pity that made my own hate of the monster seem despicable. Surely God will not permit the world to be the poorer by the loss of such a creature. This is hope to me. We are all drifting reefwards now, and faith is our only anchor. Thank God, Minna is sleeping without dreams. I fear what her dreams might be like, with such terrible memories to ground them in. She has not been so calm within my seeing since the sunset. Then for a while there came across her face a repose which was like spring after the blasts of March. I thought at the time that it was the softness of the red sunset on her face, but somehow now I think it has a deeper meaning. I am not sleepy myself, though I am weary to death. However, I must try to sleep, for there is tomorrow to think of, and there is no rest for me until... Later. I must have fallen asleep, for I was awaked by Mina, who was sitting up in bed with a startled look on her face. I could see easily, for we did not leave the room in darkness. She had placed a warning hand over my mouth, and now she whispered in my ear, "Hush, there is someone in the corridor." I got up softly, and crossing the room, gently opened the door. Outside, just outside, stretched on a mattress, lay Mr. Morris, wide awake. He raised a warning hand for silence as he whispered to me, "Hush, go back to bed, it's all right. One of us will be here all night. We don't mean to take any chances." His look and gesture forbade discussion, so I came back and told Mina. She sighed, and positively the shadow of a smile stole over her poor pale face as she put her arm around me and said softly, "Oh, thank God for good, brave men." With a sigh, she sank back again to sleep. I write this now as I am not sleepy, though I must try again. This reading brought to you by McCoy Orange Juice. Orange, you glad you bought McCoy? Not sponsored by anyone in real life. 4th of October morning. Once again during the night I was awakened by Mina. This time we had all had a good sleep, for the grey of the coming dawn was making windows into sharp oblongs, and the gas flame was like a speck rather than a disk of light. She said to me hurriedly, Go call the professor, I want to see him at once." "Why?" I asked. "I have an idea. I suppose it must have come in the night and matured without my knowing it. He must hypnotize me before the dawn, and then I shall be able to speak. Go quick, dearest, the time is getting close." I went to the door. Dr. Seward was resting on the mattress, and seeing me, he sprang to his feet. Is anything wrong? He asked in alarm. No, I replied, but Mina wants to see Dr. Van Helsing at once. I'll go then and hurry into the professor's room. I know this bit is exciting, but I'm just taking a moment to say that the person keeping watch maybe shouldn't be on a mattress. Just saying. I mean, I can fall asleep anywhere, or I could. But mattresses are where human beings like to fall asleep, usually, so doubt the wisdom of that. But that's just a minor criticism. Nothing. It's the latest in a series of really good ideas by these boys, which is not even close to their worst idea. Actually, it's maybe their best idea. I will go, he said, and hurried to the professor's room. And 2 or 3 minutes later, Van Helsing was in the room in his dressing gown, and Mr. Morris and Lord Godalming were with Dr. Seward at the door asking questions. When the professor saw Mina, a smile, a positive smile, ousted the anxiety of his face. He rubbed his hands as he said, "Oh, my dear Madame Mina, this is indeed a change. See, friend Jonathan, we have got our dear Madame Mina, as of old, back to us today." Then, turning to her, he said cheerfully, "And what am I to do for you? For at this hour you do not want me for nothing." "I want you to hypnotize me," she said. "Do it before the dawn, for I feel that then I can speak, and speak freely. But be quick, for the time is short." Without a word, he motioned her to sit up in bed. I'm not sure if Van Helsing has been, if his ability to hypnotize people has been mentioned before, or maybe all doctors could hypnotize people back then. I don't know. I don't think so. The fad for mesmerism had passed for the time being and wasn't going to be revived again until, I want to say, the 20s, kind of. Anyway, looking fixedly at her, he commenced to make passes in front of her, from over the top of her head downward, with each hand in turn. Mina gazed at him fixedly for a few minutes, during which my own heart beat like a trip hammer, for I felt that some crisis was at hand. Gradually her eyes closed, and she sat stock still. Only by the gentle heaving of her bosom could one know that she was alive. The professor made a few more passes and then stopped, and I could see that his forehead was covered with great beads of perspiration. Mina opened her eyes, but she did not seem the same woman. There was a far-away look in her eyes, and her voice had a sad dreaminess which was new to me. Raising his hand to impose silence, the professor motioned to me to bring the others in. They came on tiptoe, closing the door behind them, and stood at the foot of the bed, looking on. Mina appeared not to see them. The stillness was broken by Van Helsing's voice speaking in a low, level tone, which would not break the current of her thoughts. "Where are you?" The answer came in a neutral way. "I do not know. Sleep has no place it can call its own." For several minutes there was silence. Mina sat rigid, and the professor was staring at her fixedly. The rest was hardly dared to breathe. The room was growing lighter. Without taking his eyes from Mina's face, Dr. Van Helsing motioned me to pull up the blind. I did so, and the day seemed just about upon us. A red streak shot up, and a rosy light seemed to diffuse itself through the room. On the instant, the professor spoke again. "Where are you now?" The answer came dreamily, but with intention. It were as though she were interpreting something. I have heard her use the same tone when reading her shorthand notes. "I do not know. It is all strange to me." "What do you see?" "I can see nothing. It is all dark." "What do you hear?" I could detect the strain in the professor's patient voice. "The lapping of water. It is gurgling by, and little waves leap. I can hear them on the outside." "Then you are on a ship?" We all looked at each other, trying to glean something each from the other. We were afraid to think. The answer came quick. Oh, yes. What else do you hear? The sound of men stamping overhead as they run about. There is the creaking of a chain, and the loud tinkle as the check of the capstan falls into the ratchet. What are you doing? I am still, so still. It is like death. The voice faded away into a deep breath as one sleeping, and the open eyes closed again. By this time the sun had risen, and we were all in the full light of day. Dr. Van Helsing placed his hands on Mina's shoulders and laid her head down softly on her pillow. She lay like a sleeping child for some moments, and then with a long sigh awoke and stared and wondered to see us all around her. Have I been talking in my sleep? Was all she said. She seemed, however, to know the situation without telling, though she was eager to know what she had told. The professor repeated the conversation, and she said, Then there is not a moment to lose. It may not be yet too late. Mr. Morris and Lord Godalming started for the door, but the professor's calm voice called them back. Stay, my friends. That ship, wherever it was weighing anchor whilst she spoke. There are many ships weighing anchor at the moment in your so great port of London. Which of them is it that you seek? God be thanked that we have once again a clue, though whither it may lead us, we know not. We have been blind somewhat, blind after the manner of men, since when we can look back, we see what we might have seen looking forward, if we had been able to see what we might have seen. Alas, but that sentence is a puddle, is it not? We can know now what was in the Count's mind when he seized that money, though Jonathan's so fierce knife put him in the danger that even he dread. He meant escape. Hear me, escape. He saw that with but one earth box left, and a pack of men following dogs after a box, this London was no place for him. He have take his last earth box on board a ship, and he leave the land. He think to escape, but no, we follow him. Tally ho, as our friend Arthur would say, when he put on his red frock. I just want to take a minute here to explain the phrase tally ho, as Arthur would say, as he put on his red frock. It's not as cool as it sounds. It's not cool at all, actually. They just mean the red frock coat that people wore when they went fox hunting. Yeah. Sorry that Arthur is kind of a basic dude of the time. Our old fox is wily. Oh, so wily, and we must follow with wile. I, too, am wily, and I think his mind in a little while. You are not wily, Van Helsing. You are just pretending to be foreign. You're not clever. In meantime, we may rest and in peace, for there are waters between us which he did not want to pass, and which he could not if he would, unless the ship were to touch the land, and then only at full or slack tide. See, and the sun is just rose, and all day to sunset is to us. Let us take bath and dress, and have breakfast which we all need, and which we can eat comfortably, since he be not in the same land with us. Mina looked at him appealingly as she asked, But why need we seek him further, when he has gone away from us? He took her hand and patted it as he replied, Ask me nothing as of yet. When we have breakfast, then I answer all questions. He would say no more, and we separated to dress. After breakfast, Mina repeated her question. He looked at her gravely for a minute, and then said sorrowfully, Because, my dear Madame Mina, now more than ever must we find him, even if we have to follow him to the jaws of hell. She grew paler as she asked faintly, Why? Because, he answered solemnly, he can live for centuries, and you are but mortal woman. Time is now to be dreaded, since once he put that mark upon your throat. I was just in time to catch her as she fell forward in a faint. The end of the chapter. Oh Good God, the next chapter starts off with Dr. Seward's phonograph diary, but it's spoken by Van Helsing. Ugh. Van Helsing wants any excuse to use his just frankly bizarre ideas about the English language. So, I thought something would happen when Quincy Morris was the only one guarding them, but nope, evidently that is not one of the things, one of the possible signs that he is working for Dracula. Yeah. Yeah, I am about to call it. I'm just about to call it. I know that Evelyn wanted me to show a scarf thing, so I'm going to do that in the stream here anyway, because I can't describe it with words. I'm not spatial enough for that. So, you guys can disappear. That's fine. I don't have D&D energy tonight for, obvious reasons. All I'm going to be doing is folding a scarf. That's it. But thank you guys so much for being here, and thanks, Joe. I have a bunch of short stories on my channel too, if you want to listen to those. You don't have to. None of it's mandatory. But, okay. I don't know if Evelyn's watching this right now, but I've got a full-on scarf. Like, just a plain one. Everyone's wearing scarves at the moment. Yeah, I did a bunch of M.R. James stories. I was doing horror stories for Christmas, ghost stories for Christmas, which is a tradition in Britain and a little bit in her colonies. Well, you fold it in half, like that. Pop it there, and then just tie it. I'm going to tie it in little two things. There you go. And then you grab this bit that you just folded over, and voila. You will not be infecting anybody today. And also, it's very great because then you can tell Cersei, I want her to know it was me. That's what I think of when I see this kind of thing. Yeah, I saw on the internet. It's good. Well, it's actually quite hard to put this bit back in place once you've loosened it. But yeah, it's quite warm actually. I know this is a pandemic and everything, but I might just veil throughout the winter because it's actually really nice. And it feels secure as well. Like it's not coming off. No pins. Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. So quite like the aesthetic. Although I like to show my hair a little bit. Which I think goes against the point. But yeah, everybody who joined the stream, thank you so much for watching. I will be here tomorrow, as ever. We are in Endgame of Dracula, and then I have no particular appetite for Marjorie Kemp at the moment. I think we're all doing a lot of crying and howling at the moment too, so after Dracula, we're going to start Wuthering Heights, and that's going to be really interesting, I think. So yeah, thank you for being here. This Dracula video. My friend Danny bought me this scarf. It's beautiful. I love her. And Stay safe, everybody. Wash your hands, whatever. Just stay safe. And I will see you all tomorrow. Just a cold. That's fine. See you all tomorrow.